Annyeong. Dr. Mike from Renaissance Periodization here with my Korean brother from a wholly different mother and father actually, Charlie Jung. We're going to be teaching you how to not do barbell shrugs for your traps and how to do them properly. Remember, the target for the barbell shrug is the upper trap. Let's get to work and see how badly people fuck this up. All right, folks, first mistake is when people do the trap circle bullshit, when they think it's part of the shrug to move the shoulder joint around for no good goddamn reason. The funny thing is that the traps don't really do that. Also, gravity only points down, so focus on moving the bar up and down and not around like a crazy person. Charlie, I have no idea where this came from. People do that shit. So they'll do shrugs and they'll do that. Yep, what is that thing? You know, and sometimes they'll do it slower, or they'll pull up and then they'll do that. Who the hell knows? Looks like the funky chicken dance. What you want to do is do it the right way, which is getting a good grip and pulling the bar up, and then pulling the bar back down, and up and down, and that's it. It's that simple. Next mistake is an uncontrolled eccentric. The eccentric phase, the controlled descent, is very hypertrophic, especially for the traps, because in the human body, one of the main functions of the traps is to control your shoulder descent. So people will do it with as much weight as they can and not control the eccentric because it's easier that way. They'll do this. They'll do a good concentric, and then they'll drop, and concentric, and they'll drop, and concentric, and they'll drop. What you want to do is do a good concentric, just like he's doing, and then control, and then up, and then control. Now, there's two options really. You can do a 1 second eccentric like he's doing, or you can do a lengthened eccentric, something like 3 seconds. So he's gonna slow, and then up, and then slow. Both are totally fine. It's just variations. You can do one or you can do the other. Just don't do the thing where you let the bar go completely. Next mistake is not doing a standard range of motion for every single rep. This is bad for programming because you don't know how much actual imposition of stimulus you're creating or fatigue, and it's bad for tracking because you don't know if you're getting stronger over time. Some people start shrugging and then every rep kind of looks different. So go ahead, Charlie, do some reps are good, and then some reps are sort of halfway there, and then some reps are really good maybe. How many reps is that? Who the hell knows? Every single rep should look the same, which means every rep you should be trying to bring your shoulders into your ears, pause for a split second at the top of every rep, and then at the bottom, control the eccentric, full stretch at the bottom, and come all the way back up. Go ahead and demonstrate. Boom, and then down, and then up, and then down. Notice the same shoulder movement every time. Here, technical failure is when you can no longer go all the way up and control all the way down. You have to know in your heart of hearts, so to speak, when that's occurred, because with trap training, with shrugs, unlike with squats or something, or bench presses, where you failed because you physically can't move the bar, you can always sort of shrug the bar until you're doing almost nothing and it looks like you're being electrocuted. As soon as you can't confidently, boom, do another full range rep, stop. Folks, there's always the next set to do more reps. You don't have to degrade your technique, getting closer and closer to failure. Next, you've probably seen this mistake done hundreds of times at your local gym, is not using good technique and trying to get other muscles involved in weird head movements that are essentially ways of cheating. Right? We call this body English. Shrugs are meant for your traps to be moving and not a whole lot else. Now, sometimes your arms can bend a little as a byproduct, and as long as you're not pulling with them on purpose, that's fine. But everything else is usually garbage. A lot of people will do shrugs like this where they do the hip involvement and the funky chicken dance. Bob that head, Charlie. Remember, the most you can push your head through, that just literally causes trap growth. Wait a minute, that's backwards, all right? Good technique, Charlie, go ahead and hit it, means you're doing things strict. Notice the rest of his body really isn't moving. It's more or less just his shoulders elevating and then depressing like the traps are supposed to be helping with. Some folks, when you correct their bad technique and their swinging, will say, well, aren't high eccentric forces good for traps? They're correct, they are. What if I want to really overload my traps with a crap load of tension? Can't I help with my lower body to get the concentric and then let the eccentric be something I really try hard on for essentially an accentuated overloaded eccentric? Totally, but shitty technique's not how you do it. A lot of people do it like this. They try the bullshit garbage way and they end up just doing dog shit shrugs. They're like, you're doing something and you're sort of maybe kind of partial deadlifting and shrugging, you don't even know anymore. There are other exercises you can do which are not the barbell shrug, which should always be strict. These exercises, variations of high pulls, and the mid-thigh pull specifically, allow a dynamic concentric and allow you to get a full range of motion, and you control the eccentric, but the technique is standard every single time. Charlie, give us a look at what a mid-thigh pull might look like. Essentially, you're using a dynamic deadlift, a pull from weightlifting, and in real life, this is about as fast as it would look with heavy weight. With lightweight, you can do it way faster. It's almost like a jump shrug. You're using your entire lower body to propel up. But then notice when Charlie does it, Charlie, show us again a couple mid-thigh pulls. Notice the bar comes up quick, but he's controlling the eccentric a ton on the way down. That literally lets you train at 100% plus of your actual concentric strict shrug max. So if you want to do some shrugs with a bit more oomph to them, nothing wrong with that, but that's now a mid-thigh pull. Learn how to do it properly, YouTube that shit, and then do it right. Strictness is a really, really good thing, but sometimes you can get so strict and be such a stickler, you end up sacrificing some stimulus and even some range of motion. For example, folks will say you can't bend your arms when you're doing shrugs. What they mean is you shouldn't be actively bending your arms to try to lift the weight. You should let the traps do the work. But sometimes by keeping the arms completely strict, you actually limit range of motion. If the arms don't come out a little bit, sometimes the glenohumeral joint won't move anymore, and your trap shrugs actually end up being partials. Go ahead and Charlie, show us a super strict. He's gonna not bend his shit at all, and then it ends up being that that's as high as he can physically pull without his upper arm coming out. But if he lets it come out, he's still focusing on his traps. Go ahead and hit it. It's okay that it bends a little bit. He's not trying to pull it, but notice the huge increase in range of motion. It's okay to bend your elbows on shrugs as long as you're not willfully bending your elbows to try to use more weight and produce forces with your actual forearm flexors. You bend your elbows to allow yourself to get a super big range of motion in the traps. Next mistake is to let your hand grip limit you on shrugs. This is huge. Properly done shrugs have the kind of weight and the kind of reps, even if you're not cheating them, and for sure if you're cheating them, that your forearms really can't keep up with usually. Your traps are leveraged to do a tiny range of motion. They're incredibly well leveraged to produce a ton of force. So what ends up happening is if you just grab the bar normally and do shrugs, for a lot of people, they'll get up to a point where their trap growth will be really limited by their ability to grip. You don't want that to happen. You have three options, like we've said in a bunch of other videos. You can use chalk, which is a great start. You can get straps, which is even better. And ideally, you get something like Versa grips, and then your grip is just not a factor at all. This has actually two benefits. One, you can finally do the amount of weight and reps that actually is limiting by your traps and not limited by your forearms. And secondly, you can develop a better mind-muscle connection and focus better on trap technique, on the technique that hits your traps in the shrug, versus having to think about two things. Your grip being like almost going, and also about activating the traps. So not only can you do more with your grip no longer as a limiting factor if you use something like Versa grips, but you can do better technique that hits the traps and a better mind-muscle connection that ends up hitting the traps more. Next mistake is thinking that you have to do shrugs in a very particular style with particular grips. Super common question that we get all the time is, what do you think about wide grip shrugs? I think they're great. Snatch grip shrugs are great. If you feel it in your traps and it's okay on your joints, that's a great exercise. What about narrow grip shrugs? If you feel it in your traps, you're getting a good range of motion and your joints feel good, it's a great exercise, right? What do we mean by feel it? Just a quick reminder, if it's heavy shrugs, a high degree of tension. If it's lighter shrugs, an actual burn in your in your traps, right? And then if you are getting a good pump in your traps, that's a good sign. And if your traps feel really tired and really weak and really weird after multiple sets, that's good. So if you do like 10 sets of wide grip shrugs, but you don't feel shit afterwards, maybe it's not the best. You do 3 sets of close grip shrugs and it blows your traps up, that's a good sign. It's super personal. People are built differently. Here are some other variations you can try. Forget about the barbell. Try dumbbells. Forget about dumbbells. Try cable shrugs. Forget about shrugging standing upright. Try a slight bend, because not only does that hit your upper traps, it hits your mid traps a little bit more. There are no right answers here. As long as it's good technique, you can use any hand positions you want. Neutral works too. Dumbbells, cables, and a little bit of lean versus straight up are all awesome if it hits your target muscle well and it's good for your joints. Last mistake for barbell shrugs is going too heavy. Too light can be an issue if you don't have a good stimulus to fatigue ratio in sets of, oh, 20 to 30. You might just not feel a whole lot. Your forearms might get tired first, even with straps. Biceps might get tired, even with straps. But a lot of folks get a ton out of shrugs in the 20 to 30 rep range, especially because the time spent exerting tension isn't very high, because a lot of times it's such a low amplitude movement, the rep doesn't take a whole lot of time. Something like squats, you know, the whole rep takes a shitload of time, so a set of 8 takes like 35 or 40 seconds. With shrugs, you know, 35 or 40 seconds can be 20 to 30 reps, so no big deal there. A lot of folks get a great response in the 10 to 20 rep range from their shrugs, totally fine. However, sets of 5 to 10, probably not the best for your shrugs, because that weight is so heavy, the mind-muscle connection and the technique really starts to suffer for many people. So what the hell, we're just not supposed to train our traps in sets of 5 to 10? Well, first of all, through deadlifting and stiff-legged deadlifts and heavy rows, your traps get a ton of very beneficial ancillary, super heavy work anyway. But if you really want to blast your traps with ultra heavy weights, which actually does work really well for hypertrophy, you can use mid-thigh pulls. Remember that exercise we demonstrated earlier where you have a powerful concentric phase, peak at the top, and then control the eccentric? Not only are 5 to 10 rep sets best there, but you can use a weight you would never be able to use for sets of 5 to 10 from shrugs, so you get both benefits. Careful, because it's a really fatiguing exercise, but boy, will it fuck your traps up. Folks, that's it for shrug training the traps. Just a quick side note, there are lots of other ways to train traps. I know some people are going to talk about Y raises and single arm cable stuff. Great trap training comes in many different forms, and shrugs are not the only thing to do for your traps, but nonetheless, they are a fine option. So keep an open mind. If you have any questions about this video, shoot them into the comments. Hopefully some of you folks watching can help out people that have questions. And if you have any suggestions about what other exercises you want us to break down, shoot them in the comments as well. Folks, thank you so much for following all our stuff. Our audience has grown a ton recently. Apparently people don't hate these videos too much. Keep the suggestions coming. Thanks for subscribing. Catch you next time.